You know, sometimes a smell just sneaks up on you, doesn't ask permission, just walks right in and sits down next to your heart. This morning, I opened the kitchen window, and I'll be darned if it didn't smell just like 1961. Apples and cinnamon, but also something else. That warm, dusty scent of late summer when the screen door creaks and the coffee's still percolating, and you hear the mailman's steps crunching on the gravel out front. Land sakes alive, I hadn't thought about that porch in years. But suddenly, there it was. The chipped paint on the railing, the dented old mailbox with my name half rubbed off, and me, sitting there in my robe, holding a baby on one hip and a cup of Folgers in the other, waiting on the postman like he was bringing gold instead of gas bills. Only sometimes, he was. You see, back then, the world had a rhythm. You could set your watch by the mail truck, 10:30 on the dot, and it wasn't just about the letters. It was, how do I say this? It was about belonging. That box on the fence, it held more than paper. It held news from your sister in Missouri, birthday cards from cousins you hadn't seen in a decade, or just a coupon and a hello from the lady who made your wedding cake. And Lord have mercy, we read every word. Twice. Even the ink smudges. Back in my day, we didn't have phones dinging every 5 minutes. No text and no likes. We had real words written slow, with pens that left a blot if you breathed too hard. We had time, and quiet, and a little bit of aching in our bones, but a whole lot of people who noticed when your porch light didn't turn on. And I suppose that's what's been sitting with me lately. The thought that something got lost between then and now. Not just the mail, not just the neighbors. Something quieter, something gentler. You young folks wouldn't understand, and that's not me being snippy. I mean it kindly. See, we made do with what we had. We built a whole life from scratch and stories. We didn't have much, not a pot to pee in, as my mama used to say, but we shared what we had. A pie, a cup of sugar, a porch swing on a tired evening. And we knew our neighbors, not just their names, but their griefs. When Miss Clara lost her cat, we all put out bowls of milk for 3 nights. When my Roy, got laid off, someone left a roast on our doorstep with a note that just said Tuesday. So when I tell you that one smell this morning brought it all back, I mean all of it. That quiet summer day, that porch, that letter from my sister, the one that changed everything. I didn't know, sitting there with my coffee and my curlers in, that what was in that envelope would shape the next 20 years. But life's funny like that. It hides its biggest turns in the smallest things. And maybe that's why I'm talking to you now. Because this story's been sitting in my chest like a folded up recipe card, yellowed at the edges, but still clear where it counts. And lately I've been thinking, maybe it's time I shared it. You might not care, or maybe you will. But I'll tell you what, if you've ever waited on a letter or watched your neighbor hang up laundry and felt safer just knowing she was there, then you'll understand. So sit a spell. Let me tell you how it was. Back when the mail mattered. The yard was our whole world. And neighbors, well, they were the kind of people who'd notice if you didn't come outside by noon. And it all started with that letter. It's funny, the things you remember. Not the big events, usually not the weddings or hospital stays, or the day the president got shot. No, what sticks with you is how the sun looked on the laundry line, or the way the grass felt under your bare feet when you were carrying a baby and 2 pies at the same time. I was 28, like I said. Already had 3 little ones, all under 6. Lord have mercy, it's a wonder I ever sat down. My husband Roy worked long hours for the railroad, gone most of the day and back just in time to fix the screen door or rub his sore knees. And I was a homemaker like they used to call it. But really, I was a referee, a short order cook, a nurse, a gardener, and sometimes, just a woman trying to remember what quiet felt like. We lived on Maple Street, just 4 blocks from the grain elevator. You could hear the whistle blow at noon, and that meant lunch, usually sandwiches and the last scoop of potato salad if the kids hadn't beat me to it. We had a little yard out back, not much, but it had good dirt and wild violets that popped up every spring. Roy built a swing from an old tire, and the kids used to fight over who got the first turn after rain. That yard, it was more than a patch of grass. It was our town square, our church pew, our theater stage. I've seen more scraped knees, birthday candles, and July fireflies in that yard than anywhere else on earth. And the front yard, well, that was for the world. The neighbors, the mailman, the occasional door-to-door man trying to sell you brushes or a vacuum we couldn't afford. I remember sitting on the steps with Lorraine, my neighbor from 2 doors down. She always brought over her plum preserves, said they were too good not to share. And she was right. We'd sip coffee, trade recipes, and talk about the weather like it was headline news. I'll tell you what, back then, people didn't just live next to each other. They knew each other. If you sneezed on Tuesday, someone brought you soup by Wednesday. I wasn't fancy. Still ain't. But I had a rhythm to life, one I could dance to, even if it was just in flour-covered socks on a linoleum floor. I believed in small things: warm bread, clean sheets, the feel of a baby's hand grabbing your thumb. I believed kindness mattered more than being right. And I truly, deeply believed that people always came back. They had to. Where else would they go? You know, I used to write letters to my sister every Wednesday night after the kids were asleep. Didn't matter if I had nothing to say. I'd just sit there with my pen and a cup of warm milk, talking about the roses or the way little Jimmy learned to whistle. And when I'd get a letter back, well, it was like somebody handed me a piece of the world again. Something that said, you matter. You're seen. That's what life was then. Ordinary, yes, but rich in the ways that count. The kind of richness you don't see till years later, when the house is quiet and the mailbox mostly empty. So when I tell you the yard, the porch, the people, they were everything, I mean it. That was the season when I thought life would stretch out forever, like those summer days that don't end till the crickets say so. I thought babies stayed little longer. I thought neighbors never moved. And I thought that if you loved people well enough, they'd stay. Maybe that's just the heart talking. But back then, it felt true. And in that truth, I built a life. It was a Tuesday. I remember that clear as day, 'cause the wash had just gone out on the line and Lorraine was hollerin' across the street about her plum tree gettin' eaten up by squirrels. Lord have mercy, she said. Those varmints are gonna get more fruit than I do this year. I just laughed and waved at her with the clothespin still in my mouth. The kids were running barefoot in the yard, their knees already muddy even though I'd just scrubbed them after breakfast. The sun was high, and the cicadas had started their chorus early, the kind of day where everything hums just a little louder. And then I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Not just any sound now. It was Mr. Joe, our postman. Bless his soul. Always wore a wool hat, even in July. Said it kept the heat in and the nonsense out. He had that slow walk, like the whole world would wait for him, and you know what? We did. Because Mr. Joe never brought just mail. He brought the world. That day, he tipped his cap and handed me a single envelope. Thin, light, but it didn't feel ordinary. I held it and I swear my hands went still. There was no return address, just NW in the top left corner and a Kansas City postmark. But I knew. It was my sister Myrna. Now Myrna, she was the wildflower in our garden. Always a little brighter, a little louder, the one who painted her nails fire engine red even when Mama said it was unladylike. We hadn't spoken in, maybe a year. Not out of anger, just distance, life. The way it swallows time without you noticing. She'd gone to the city, found herself a job at some radio station, and I stayed put with diapers and casseroles and the same view every day. But when I saw that envelope, my heart, well, it did something. It wasn't fear. It wasn't joy either. It was like someone knocked on a door inside me I didn't remember closing. I sat right there on the porch steps and opened it with my thumb, careful not to rip the paper. The letter smelled like lilac perfume, not fresh, but like it had lived in a drawer with good memories. And her handwriting loopy, rushing, always trailing off like she had too much to say and not enough time to say it. She wrote, "Opal, I don't know what made me write today, but I woke up missing you something awful. I've been thinking, maybe I need a change. Maybe I need to see you. I was wondering, how would you feel if I came for a little visit? Just a few lines." That's all it was. But I read it 3 times, and I'll be darned if my eyes didn't blur. Because I knew it wasn't just a visit. I could feel it in the curve of her Y, in the way she didn't say when she'd leave. It was a reaching out, a soft knock from a sister I'd spent my life loving, even when I didn't know how to hold on to her. And I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, staring out at the road, the laundry flapping behind me like a row of white flax. The breeze felt cooler, the world quieter. I felt 17 again, nervous for no reason. You ever get a feeling deep in your chest, like something's coming, but you don't know if it's a storm or a song? That was me. I didn't know then that Myrna would come and never leave. That she'd grow roots right there on Maple Street and change our family in ways I still can't explain. All I knew was my sister was coming home, and for some reason I couldn't name, I wasn't ready. And yet, I was so ready. At first, it was good. Myrna showed up 2 weeks after the letter, all legs and lipstick, 2 suitcases, and a hat she didn't need. The kids squealed when they saw her, Auntie Myrna, and she picked M all up like they were feathers. Roy carried in her bags without saying a word, just tipped his head like, all right then. We didn't talk about how long she'd stay. We just made up the guest room and put another chair at the table. That's how things were done back then. You didn't ask too many questions if someone showed up in need. She brought energy with her, the kind that makes your curtains flutter even when the windows are shut. She sang while she cooked, didn't even need music. She taught the kids little dance steps in the kitchen and started reorganizing my pantry like she was fixin' to open a store. "You've got too many cans of beans, Opal," she'd say with that laugh that made you smile even when you didn't want to. But after a while, it started to feel like too much, like I couldn't find my own rhythm anymore. I remember one morning, I went to get my apron from the hook by the stove, and it was gone. Myrna had washed it, ironed it, and folded it into the linen drawer to make things easier, she said. But I didn't want easier. I wanted familiar. I wanted mine. Then came the whispers. Not mean, just curious. From Lorraine, from Mrs. Edgerton at the market. "She's still stayin'? She lookin' for work?" Thought she was just visitin'. And every time, I'd smile and say, "Oh, you know Myrna," but inside, I was a knot of questions I didn't dare untangle. The truth was, Myrna didn't talk about why she left Kansas City. Not once. But I could tell she wasn't runnin' to us. She was runnin' from something. One night, I found her out on the back porch, smokin' one of Roy's old cigarettes. She looked tired in a way that mascara can't fix. I sat down next to her and said, "You all right?" She said, "I don't know how to be still, Opal. I don't know how to stay." That hit me hard, 'cause I'd spent my whole life staying when I wanted to scream, staying through fevers and floods and months when the money didn't stretch. And suddenly, Her freedom, her breezy comebacks, and her barefoot dancing felt like an accusation. Like she was saying, without saying it, "You settled." But she didn't mean it that way. I know that now. Still, I started pulling away. Quietly. I stopped leaving letters out on the table. I folded my own apron. I tightened. Not angry. Just unsure of where I fit anymore. She was the favorite aunt, the fun one. I was the tired one. And I hated myself for feeling that way. Then one day, Roy came in from work, set down his lunch pail, and looked at me like he saw something was fraying. He didn't say much. Never did. But that night, he turned off the radio early and sat with me while I folded socks. Didn't say a word. Just sat. And somehow, that said plenty. See, the house hadn't gotten smaller. But my place in it had. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want her to leave. But I didn't know how to hold on to myself with her shadow in every room. And I was too proud to say it. That was the beginning of the ache I didn't have words for. Not then. It was a Thursday. Funny the things your mind holds on to, not the year, not even the season, just that it was Thursday. The stew was on the stove, rain tapping soft against the window. The house smelled like carrots in thyme, the kind of smell that says, "You're home, you're safe." But I wasn't. Not that night. Myrna had gone into town that afternoon, said she needed air. I didn't ask questions anymore. I was tired of waiting for explanations that never came. She came back just before supper, soaked through, not a coat, not a smile. Just water dripping from her hair like tears. She wasn't ready to cry. I was folding laundry in the den. Quiet. Doing what I always did, trying to disappear into usefulness. She came in, didn't even take her shoes off, and said, "Do you ever think about what you gave up, Opal?" I looked at her. She wasn't angry. That would have been easier. She looked lost. I said, "I didn't give up. I chose this life." She sat down hard, like her bones were tired of holding it all up. "No, Opal," she said, "you accepted it. There's a difference." And Lord forgive me, I snapped. I didn't mean to. But it was like all the quiet I'd been swallowing since she walked through my door came flooding out of me like rain through a broken roof. I stood there, fists clenched in a pair of Jimmy's socks, and I said, "You think you're the only one who wanted more? You think I don't wake up sometimes wondering what happened to the girl who wanted to see the ocean and wear red shoes?" She looked at me with those big eyes, the same ones she had when we were little, and she whispered, "Then why didn't you?" And I didn't have an answer. Because life isn't about the big decisions. It's about the ones you don't even notice you're making. I turned away. Went back to folding. My hands were shaking, but I wouldn't let her see. That's when she said it. "I got fired, Opal. A month before I came. Not laid off. Fired. For reasons I'm not proud of. I didn't come here to visit. I came because I had nowhere else." She choked on the words. Sat there staring at her hands like they didn't belong to her anymore. And that's when I felt it, that shift. Like the moment when the sky goes from heavy to breaking. The clock on the wall ticked loud. The rain stopped. Even the stew had gone still. I dropped the socks. Sat down beside her. But I didn't touch her. I couldn't. Not yet. Because part of me was still angry. Angry that she'd broken into my life without knocking. Angrier still that she was brave enough to say what I never could. And just like that, I knew, the part of me that kept pretending, the part that wanted neatness and silence and folded napkins, that part cracked. And in the crack, there was grief. Grief for the girl I used to be. Grief for the sister I couldn't save. Grief for the fact that we were both just tired women pretending we still had choices. That was the night I broke my own heart. But I reckon, sometimes that's how the light gets in. After that night, the house didn't feel angry. It just felt quiet, like everything had exhaled. We didn't talk much the next morning. I made biscuits, the good kind, with buttermilk and cold butter cut in by hand, and she poured the coffee, and we sat, not across from each other, but side by side, like we were waiting on a bus that might never come. The children were already outside, chasing a moth like it held the answers to the universe. Roy had left early, like he always did. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. You know, silence can be heavy. Heavier than yelling. Heavier than grief sometimes. Because when you're yelling, at least you're trying to hold on. Silence, that's when you've let go of the rope. And for a while, that's what we did. Let go. I kept the house tidy. That's what I knew how to do. I scrubbed the counters until they squeaked. Rearranged the same drawer 3 times. I made casseroles I didn't want to eat. Started writing letters I didn't send. It was like I was trying to live life around the edges, afraid of stepping in too deep. Myrna stayed in her room a lot those days. She'd open the window just a crack, and I could hear the same record playing over and over. Patsy Cline. I Fall to Pieces. I wanted to knock. I didn't. I was scared if I opened the door, I'd fall in too. We were 2 women under one roof, each carrying a sorrow neither one could name aloud. I thought maybe time would fix it. But time doesn't fix everything. Sometimes, it just teaches you how to carry it without spilling so much. There was a part of me that went quiet in those days. The girl who used to hum while she baked, she stopped. The woman who wrote long letters full of small joys, she didn't pick up the pen as often. Even Roy noticed. One evening, he set a glass of lemonade beside me and said, "You're awful quiet lately." I just nodded. Didn't even sip the glass. I wasn't mad anymore. Not really. Just tired. Tired in a way sleep doesn't touch. Tired of being the strong one. Tired of pretending I was fine just because my apron was clean. And I'll tell you what hurt the most. It wasn't the argument. It wasn't even the truth Myrna dropped like a cracked plate on my floor. It was realizing that for all our love, all our shared blood and memories, we didn't know how to hold each other. Not when it really mattered. But life doesn't stop just because your heart's in pieces. The mail kept coming. The laundry kept piling. Lorraine still hollered across the street about squirrels. The world didn't pause for my sadness. So I folded the towels, hung the sheets, tied my hair up, and opened the curtains every morning, even if the light felt too sharp some days. That was the season when I learned something no one teaches you in Sunday school. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't letting go, it's staying soft when you want to harden. And I tried. Lord knows I tried. But I wasn't the same. Not angry. Not broken. Just quieter. Like a radio turned low in an empty room. Still playing. Still there. But only if you leaned in real close to hear it. It started with a pie. Funny, isn't it? After all that was said, and all that wasn't, it wasn't some big talk or grand apology that nudged my heart open again. It was a peach pie. Warm, imperfect, and a little too sweet. I was in the kitchen, wiping down the same counter I'd already cleaned twice that morning. Myrna walked in quiet, like she was afraid to break the air. She had flour on her cheek and a smudge of butter on her sleeve. I didn't even look up. "I made a pie," she said. And I almost laughed, not from joy, just from the sheer strangeness of it. Myrna, who couldn't boil an egg in high school. Myrna, who once burned Jell-O. I turned. There it was on the counter, golden, bubbling, messy in the middle. No crimped edges. No lattice. Just fruit and crust and effort. "Used a recipe," she said. "Kind of." And she smiled. Just a little. I didn't say much. Just nodded, touched the edge of the pan with my finger like I had to be sure it was real. We didn't eat it that day. Not right then. But the smell filled the house. It filled something else too. You see, when someone makes you a pie not because they have to, not for a holiday or a guest, but just because they want to, that means something. That's a kind of apology you don't need words for. That night, I sat out on the porch swing, same one Roy hung the summer after Jimmy was born, and watched the dusk settle over the yard. Myrna came out and handed me a slice on the good plate, the one we only used for company. Neither of us said anything for a long time. Then she whispered, "I don't know what I'm doing, Opal, but I don't want to disappear." I looked at her. Not the way I used to, like the sister who left, or the guest who overstayed. I saw her, just as she was. A woman with cracked heels and tired eyes who still knew how to make something beautiful from scratch. Same as me. And, just like that, something loosened. In my chest. In the air. In the years between us. Later that week, I found her in the pantry, sorting the canned goods again. But this time I didn't feel annoyed. I just said, "If you move my beans again, I'll hide your nail polish." She laughed so loud she startled the cat. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And sometimes that's all you need. I started writing again. Nothing big. Just little notes for the kids, for Roy, even one for Myrna. Left pie in the fridge. Save me a slice. I even found myself humming while I swept the porch. First time in months. Lorraine noticed. Called across the street, "Opal May, did someone light a fire under you?" I just grinned and said, "Maybe." Or maybe I just remembered who I was. You see, we think healing comes like thunder. But more often, it comes like pie. Slow. Homemade. A little burnt around the edges. That was the first day I stopped feeling stuck. Not because the past was fixed, but because I saw a way forward. Not big and bold, just one bite at a time. It was late October, just before the frost set in. The mornings had that chill that made your breath visible, and the leaves out front turned the color of old postcards rust, gold, a little bit of memory in everyone. The kids were back in school. Roy had started taking his thermos again. And Myrna, she was still here, but softer somehow. Not trying so hard, not hiding so much. I'd been cleaning the hall closet, not because it needed it, but because I needed something to do with my hands. And there, in the bottom drawer, behind an old Afghan and a stack of church bulletins from 1962, I found the box. It was small, worn, tied with the same faded ribbon I'd used the day Myrna moved in. Inside, letters. Not from her, from me. Letters I wrote and never sent. Some angry, some scared, some just lonely. Pages full of words I didn't have the courage to say out loud. One of them was dated 2 years after Roy and I got married. "I miss my sister," it read, "but I don't know how to bring her home without losing myself." I sat right there on the floor, knees cracking like autumn branches, and read everyone. And I cried, not because I was sad, not even because I regretted. I cried because I saw her, and I saw me. All the versions of myself I had tried to hide, the tired mother, the scared wife, the little girl who never knew how to say, "Please don't leave again." That's when I knew I didn't have to keep carrying it all. So I got up, took the box outside, still tied, walked down the back steps, barefoot even though the ground was cold, and I dug a small hole right beneath the hydrangeas. That bush had bloomed late that year, like it was waiting for something. I didn't say a prayer. I didn't whisper goodbye. I just placed the box in the earth and covered it with my hands. And in that moment, I let go, not of Myrna, not of the past, but of the weight I'd been dragging behind me like an old coat that didn't fit anymore. You see, forgiveness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just deciding not to reread the same chapter again. Sometimes it's dirt under your nails and wind in your hair and knowing you're allowed to grow. When I came back inside, Myrna was in the kitchen, humming something I couldn't quite place. She turned, looked at me real still, and asked, "You okay?" And for the first time in a long time, I didn't lie. "I'm getting there," I said. And I meant it. That night I made apple crisp her favorite. And we sat together, not needing to fill the silence, because something had shifted, not between us, within me. I no longer needed her to say sorry. I no longer needed life to explain itself. I had chosen not to forget, not to erase, but to live forward, without blame, without shame, just forward. That was the night I finally gave myself permission to stop measuring life by what I'd lost and start noticing what was still mine to love. You know, people talk a lot these days about how the world's gone mad, too fast, too loud, and maybe that's true. But I don't think the world changed so much as we just stopped noticing it. Back in my day, and I know how that sounds, but hear me out, life wasn't easier. We had troubles. Money was tight, folks got sick, sometimes your heart broke, and you still had to bake a pie and show up with a smile. But things were slower, and slower meant you had time to see people, to listen, to feel things all the way through before scrolling past them. I've spent a lot of years thinking about what mattered most. And it wasn't the clean counters. It wasn't whether I baked the bread just right or if I missed church one Sunday. It was the moments, tiny, blink and you miss them moments, that stacked up like quilt squares into a life. A letter in the mail, a baby's hand wrapped around your finger, your husband starting your car in winter without saying a word, a pie made by a sister who didn't know how to say sorry. That's what sticks. That's what you carry when the noise fades and the kids are grown and the house goes still. Now I look around and Lord knows the world's buzzing. Everyone's looking for something, chasing things, success, likes, faster Wi-Fi. But I'll tell you what I've learned. What you're really looking for, the peace, the purpose, the feeling of home, it don't come from speed. It comes from presence. From standing still long enough to feel the sun on your face. From setting down your phone and a skin, how are you really? From not being afraid to say I miss you before it's too late. You don't need a dozen chances to get life right. Sometimes one pie and one honest moment is all it takes to start again. And if there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. Don't wait. Don't wait to forgive someone who doesn't know how to ask. Don't wait to dance in the kitchen, even if the floor is sticky. Don't wait to write the letter you've been carrying in your chest for 20 years. 'Cause one day, and I say this with all the love I've got left, the porch gets quiet. The kids stop running through the yard. The neighbors change. And what you're left with isn't what you owned. It's what you offered. I used to think strength meant keeping things in. Now I know it's letting them out. Not all at once. Not loud. Just honest, gentle, true. So maybe, just maybe, it's your time to stop waiting for the perfect moment. To stop expecting life to fix itself. Maybe it's time to take one quiet, tender step toward the thing you've been avoiding. Maybe it's time to bake that pie. You know, honey, I've been thinking a lot about what it means to love, really love someone. Not just the quick kisses or the words we say when the sun's shining, but the kind of love that lingers, that sticks, that circles back to you even when you don't expect it. Back in my day, folks didn't say I love you as much as they showed it. Roy never said it to me out loud, not once, not even when the world was loud around us. But he'd warm my car on those cold Kansas mornings before I even woke up. That was his way of saying it. That was his love song. And I guess that's the kind of love I've spent my life carrying. The kind that isn't always loud, but it's steady. The kind that waits. Sometimes I wonder if love, true love, should always come back. Not like a boomerang, all neat and tidy, but like a good friend who knows when you need a hand, or like the smell of fresh bread in the morning that makes you feel safe. I think about that letter from my sister Myrna and how it changed everything. I think about the porch where I waited for the mailman, the yard where the kids played, and the neighbors who knew when to bring over pie and when to just sit in silence with you. This story isn't just about the past, you see. It's about today too. About how we hold on to what's real in a world that's always rushing past. About the small things and note, a smile, a slice of peach pie, that can heal a heart. Maybe love is like that. Not perfect, not always easy, but something that comes back, again and again, when you least expect it. So I ask you, and this is the question I leave with you tonight. Do you believe true love should return? That it's patient enough to wait for you on the porch, or in a letter, or in a quiet moment when everything else has fallen away? Sometimes, when the house is still and the moon is just right, I swear I hear footsteps on the gravel. And I think, maybe it does. Maybe it remembers. And if you listen close enough, maybe yours does too. Thank you for sitting with me a while. For listening to an old woman's story about mailboxes and mud puddles and the people who hold us close even when they're far away. May you find your own porch light in the dark, and may you always know someone is waiting for you to come home. Good night, dear heart. Until next time.